love you, Cleveland.
I love you, Cleveland. And I love you, Ohio. And a very pleasant welcome to this week's version, Bonus Time with Drennan, here on the Big Play Sports Network, brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. Hi, I'm Bruce Drennan, along with Ryan Smith. We would first and foremost want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas as we are recording our show here on Christmas Eve from Marathon, Florida, in the Florida Keys. Ryan, Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Bruce, Merry Christmas to you as well. As always, I'm holding it down here in Cleveland while you're living it up in Marathon. Happy to be here with you on Bonus Time.
Boy, do we have a lot to talk about today, and let's get started. We'll start with the Cleveland Browns. And this game with Buffalo featured the good and the bad. The good includes the team effort to almost beat the heavily favored Bills. I applaud the Browns for covering the spread, not giving up. Obviously, Harold Fannin had a great game again. He's the real deal. I told you when we drafted him out of Bowling Green, I liked him because he's so good after the catch and picking up additional yardage. The good also includes Myles Garrett getting a half a sack, and so he's inching that much closer to the record. As a result, he's got 2 games left, enabling him to get one more. That's all he needs to overtake Michael Strahan and T.J. Watt for the best single season mark of all time. And he has 22 right now. And finally, rookie Shedeur Sanders made some mistakes, couple of picks. Again, being down here in Marathon, I confess I didn't see our Browns game because we are part of the Miami market. So the feed we got down here was that meaningless game between Miami and Cincinnati. But I certainly saw all the highlights of the Browns game. And tell me, Ryan, it looked like Shedeur Sanders had a pretty good game.
I would say relatively, yeah. You know, a lot of people are criticizing Shedeur Sanders because of the average depth of target, which was below, or at halftime, it was below 2 yards, and it ended up being a little bit above 2 yards. A lot of the things we criticized Dylan Gabriel for, just the dink and dump offense. And Bruce, you know, when you're trying to string together these drives, these 8, 9, 10 play drives, it just leaves room for mistakes. You know, with Shedeur Sanders in a few games, we've seen some explosive plays, the big throws downfield, which, you know, we hadn't seen for a quarterback, you know, this season until Shedeur Sanders stepped into the role. As you mentioned, a couple mistakes there. The ball behind Quinshawn that bounced off him that led to the interception. He kept his eyes on Harold Fannin on that bubble screen that led to another interception. The only thing is, Bruce, right now, 8 picks to 6 touchdowns, more turnovers than he has touchdown passes.
But let me interrupt you.
Sure.
In all fairness, the offensive line is a joke. And I'm not impressed with the Browns receivers with the exception of Fannin. So, Njoku's going to be gone. Maybe, I think what the Browns have to do, and again, to me, it's culture. We'll see what happens with Stefanski and Barry at the end of the year. But as far as getting this team into contention, they have to make a call on Sanders because they're not going to get Mendoza. There's too many teams that need quarterbacks that have more ammunition to trade up and get what they want in the likes of a Mendoza. So let's say if they believe that Sanders can be the guy, use all of these picks that we've got to build a strong offensive line and get us some skill position receivers. And let's see what happens. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing for the Browns is, right, if they lose out, which is very possible, as we all know, that's how the Browns work, well, then they will, in fact, hold the number 2 pick. And in that case, if the number 1 pick does go as Fernando Mendoza, they'll be able to take possibly Dante Moore out of Oregon. Those are the top 2 quarterback prospects. There is still a route, Bruce, where the Browns could hold the number 1 pick. You need a couple things to happen. You would need the Giants to beat the Raiders this week, and then you need the Raiders to beat Kansas City, their beat-up team, which we just saw Tennessee take down. But you're right, if they do elect to go with the Shedeur Sanders route, they like what they've seen. Well, in fact, you could probably see a trade down in that first round again to allow maybe 3 first-round picks, right? If a team wants to trade up to number 2 to go get their quarterback, then you could be looking at 3 first-round picks. You could take a Carnell Tate, you could take a Caleb Lomu, an offensive lineman, and you can continue to build those second, third rounds with receivers and offensive line. I know a lot of people, a lot of Shedeur fans want them to go down that route, but you're right, Bruce. They're at the time where they truly have to evaluate Shedeur Sanders, whether or not they think he is their quarterback of the future or not.
He appeared to be getting more comfortable in the pocket and choosing his time to break out and move the chains with his legs.
Yeah, I was surprised. Bruce, these last 3 games, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, your leading rusher has been Shedeur Sanders. That's been one of those things that has been a bright spot, his ability to escape the pocket. Now, whether or not that's sustainable, whether or not that's the offensive type that the Browns want to go down, the philosophy, it's always good to have a mobile quarterback. We know the quarterbacks in today's day and age have to have legs to get to that superstar level. It's just the way the game has developed. And I think maybe that was an underrated part of Sanders' game. You've seen him be able to escape tight pockets and get out and catch first downs. I think that's a bright spot of Shedeur game.
The bad part of this game is obviously Judkins dislocating his ankle and the fracture of the broken leg. That's a shame. Hopefully he can come back. They say it's about 5 months, I know, but hopefully he can come back and resume being a top flight running back, because I was certainly impressed, as all Browns fans should be, with the way he played in his rookie year. The other negative is that the defensive front allowed Cook to rush for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. But by and large, the Browns covering against the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion, deserves to be applauded. So we do so in ending this segment. We've got so much to cover with the NFL and college. Let's go to break. We'll come back and we'll dive into it, as we've only just begun. Bonus time on Big Play.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Smart Choice Windows, energy-efficient products at an affordable price. Visit smartchoicewindows.com today.
What a week in the National Football League. Let's start with Seattle's 38-37 overtime victory over the LA Rams. The Seahawks overcame a 457-yard 3-touchdown effort by MVP candidate Matthew Stafford. Seattle trailed 30-14 in the fourth quarter of this game. Seahawks had been 0-172 in games when down 15 points or more in the fourth quarter. Not only did Seattle clinch a playoff berth, but at 12-3, they assumed the number 1 seed in the NFC. But this game featured one of the most bizarre plays I have ever seen, and without question, the strangest 2-point conversion ever. Sam Darnold's screen pass was tipped, but most importantly, it was a backward pass. The replay clearly showed it was a backward pass, which by rule is a live ball, even if it hits the ground, like it did in this case. The ball caromed forward into the end zone, and Seahawk Zach Charbonnet nonchalantly walked up to the ball, picked it up in the end zone, and by rule, that is a successful 2-point conversion. The key to this play is that no whistle was blowing before Charbonnet picked up the ball in the end zone. Now, had a whistle been blown, that would have killed the play, and the ball would have been ruled dead. But this was either great officiating, or the officials didn't know it was a forward or backward pass and thus hesitated because of the uncertainty. This, by rule, was a fumble. Unbelievable. I have never seen anything like this in all my years. Seattle wins this game despite being outgained 581-415. The Rams scored touchdowns on just 3 of 6 red zone trips. That hurt them. Seattle converted all 3 2-point conversion attempts, and that's a rarity. And Seattle's one of the most rushing, one of the worst rushing teams in the NFL, but they rushed for 171 yards in this game against one of the league's best rush defensive units. And get this, the Rams are the only team since 1940 to have 500 plus total yards, 3 or more takeaways, no turnovers, and lose. What a game, Ryan.
You know, Bruce, on that 2-point conversion, that's why they tell you to play until you hear the whistle. Zach Charbonnet jumping on that ball, the casual, most easiest 2-point conversion of his career he'll probably have, Bruce. You know, give credit to Sam Darnold. Came back after the picks. That was probably the biggest win of his career as he looks to get one in the postseason. But that game has massive repercussions. Seattle now looking to get that 1 seed. The Rams, honestly, now falling behind the 49ers. It gives the 49ers of all teams a chance to get that number 1 seed in the NFC. Just a wacky game, Bruce.
Chicago 22, Green Bay 16, overtime victory for the Bears. And unlike the Browns, who find ways to lose, the Bears this year are finding ways to win. They overcame a 10-point deficit late in the fourth quarter. This was the Bears' 6th win this season after trailing in the final 2 minutes. Get that. And the Bears outscored Green Bay 19-3 combined in the fourth quarter and overtime. Green Bay and Chicago is the NFL's longest running rivalry. Green Bay has been dominating since 2008 with a record of 30-6 before this loss. You've got to have a little bit of luck after the Bears kicked a field goal to narrow the gap to 16-9 with only a minute 59 remaining. They pulled off an onside kick. And how often with this new kick rule do you see a successful onside kick recovery? And that was with 24 seconds left. The Bears tied the game on a 4th down pass to Jedi Walker, and Chicago coach Ben Johnson decided to kick the extra point rather than go for 2 in the win. And his decision, he figured, I'll take my chances in OT. And boy, did that turn out to be the right decision. Green Bay had a 4th and 1 at the Chicago 36-yard line when backup quarterback Malik Willis, who took over for the concussed Jordan Love, we'll get to that later, he fumbled the snap. 4 plays later, Bears quarterback Caleb Williams threw a perfect, and I mean perfect, pass 46 yards in the end zone to DJ Moore, who made a great catch. But I mean, that was a perfect pass. And despite very good coverage, I thought, too. So the Bears are now the number 2 seed at 11-4 in the NFC and enjoy a 1.5-game lead on Green Bay. They're all banged up. Still uncertain whether Love's going to play in the next game or even Willis, the backup. Packers are 9-5-1. The Bears have 2 very tough games remaining, though, at San Francisco and then home to Detroit. Green Bay will host Baltimore, finish the regular season at Minnesota. Unbelievable, Ryan.
Bruce, it seems like we're seeing the next step to Caleb Williams becoming the next superstar of the league. You know, in just a couple weeks, you saw him make maybe the best throw of his career against our Cleveland Browns. He follows it up with maybe the best throw of the season, that touchdown throw in overtime you mentioned to DJ Moore, right? And now for the Bears, all you need is one more win to clinch up that NFC North. The Packers and Lions fighting for that last spot, probably in the NFC playoffs. It'll be an interesting race to the end.
Pittsburgh 29, their 29-24 road victory at Detroit means that the Lions are facing elimination from making the playoffs. They must win their last 2 games, and Green Bay must lose their last 2 games. Green Bay hosts Baltimore and then finishes at Minnesota. Detroit visits Minnesota and finishes at Chicago. Aaron Rodgers and Pittsburgh, in my opinion, earned this victory. Despite the Lions fans crying about the way this game ended, they called it controversial. To me, it wasn't controversial. St. Brown obviously committed offensive pass interference, pushing off the defenders so he could receive that pass. And you can't, by rule, end a game on the defense, but you can end the game with a foul on the offense. I thought Rodgers showed why he's one of the greatest, manufacturing time-consuming drives and really brilliant example of eating up the clock. So give the Bears credit, or give Pittsburgh credit in this one. Rodgers really showed why Pittsburgh has got to be taken seriously in the postseason.
Aaron Rodgers the last couple weeks looks like he's vintage Aaron Rodgers again, Bruce. It's been very impressive, but even more so has been their defense. Limiting Jahmyr Gibbs to 7 yards on the ground, not many teams can do that. They certainly earned that win. I agree with you. It was clear offensive pass interference. Good effort by Jared Goff to catch the ball and run into the end zone, but at the end of the day, the Steelers played a better game on the road. They deserved that win, and now it looks like they're going to win the AFC North.
And the play before that they called the penalty on was also a good call, because by rule, that's a penalty in the NFL, picking off a potential defender. All right, Jacksonville 34, Denver 20. The Jaguars went into Mile High City and totally outplayed the number 1 seed in the AFC. The AFC South leaders proved they are for real. Proved, I say, Ryan. Trevor Lawrence, 3 touchdown passes, and snapping Denver's 11-game win streak. Jacksonville has now outscored their opponents in their last 6 games, 205 to 92. The Jags are in the driver's seat in their division to win it. They travel to Indianapolis and they host lowly Tennessee. Meanwhile, Denver, even with the loss, stays on top of the AFC as the number 1 seed. However, they finished the regular season at home against the LA Chargers, who they lost to 23-20 in week 3, the last time that they lost before this game Sunday.
Bruce, I'll admit it. I was wrong. You were right. What's new, right? No, Trevor Lawrence is playing like the best quarterback in the league right now. It's amazing to see. This is finally everything that Jacksonville was promised. Trevor Lawrence had a career day against the Jets, goes into what is maybe the most difficult place to play in the entire NFL in Denver, and absolutely lights them up. I give Trevor Lawrence his credit. I give Liam Cohen his credit. I was critical of the hire. I didn't know I liked it, but here we are, Bruce. Almost to Christmas, and the Jaguars are still playing for the number 1 seed in the AFC. Just an incredible turnaround in Jacksonville.
And that's without Hunter.
Exactly.
Their number 1 pick in the draft, who the Browns could have had. All right, Carolina 23, Tampa Bay 20. The Panthers outplayed and outlasted Baker Mayfield and the Bucs to take over sole possession of first place in the NFC South. This was Carolina's first win versus Mayfield after losing 5 in a row. The Bucs have now lost 3 in a row. And however, they could still wind up as the divisional champions if they beat Miami and then win the rematch at home versus a Carolina. We shall see. It's such a weak division. New England 28, Baltimore 24. Mike Vrabel's New England Patriots staged yet another comeback, this time overcoming an 11-point fourth quarter deficit to clinch a playoff berth, improving to 12-3 on the year. Lamar Jackson left the game toward the end of the first half with a bad back. Baltimore kept New England in the game with self-inflicted wounds. Baltimore's turnovers helped keep the Patriots within range. Drake May engineered the winning touchdown drive that sealed the victory on the road. This loss for Baltimore now means that they can't make the playoffs as a wild card. They can still do it as the divisional champions, but they've got to catch and overtake Pittsburgh, which means that Pittsburgh must lose out in their last 2 games, and Baltimore must win out in their last 2 games. I say forget it. Adios, John Harbaugh.
Yeah, Bruce, if I was a betting man, and I am, I bet the Steelers are going to win the AFC North this week when they take on our Cleveland Browns at home. It's been a weird year. Lamar's been up and down. He's been hurt. I know a lot of people are calling for Tomlin's job. Now a lot of people are calling for John Harbaugh's job. It just goes to show no matter how long you are with an organization, they have a certain standard, and when you don't reach it, they expect to change.
San Francisco 48, Indianapolis 24. This game was the Brock Purdy show all the way. He became the first 49er quarterback since Joe Montana to throw at least 5 touchdown passes. Purdy finished 25 of 34 for 5 TDs. He did have one pick. He also becomes the first San Francisco quarterback with 5 touchdown passes since Steve Young threw 6 of them versus the San Diego Chargers in Super Bowl 29. This win improves San Francisco to 11-4. They've won 5 straight now, and they are very much in contention, not only for the NFC West title, but they can also get the #1 seed in the conference. They finish at home against the Chicago Bears and Seattle. Indiana losing clinches playoff spots for Buffalo, Jacksonville, and the LA Chargers. 44-year-old Phillip Rivers played a good game in defeat. However, the Colts they now stand at 8-7, and the only way that they can make the playoffs is to win out and Houston to lose out. Indianapolis plays Houston in the last game of the regular season, and they host Jacksonville next week, Ryan.
Bruce, it's just crazy to think about the Rams, who are a lot of people's Super Bowl favorite, led by an MVP favorite, and Matthew Stafford right now are third in their own division with 11 wins. It's kind of reminiscent of the NFC North last year when you had the Lions and Vikings at the top. It gets interesting now because the 49ers, if they win out and Seattle drops 1-2, or they play, I believe, in last week. So as you mentioned, Bruce,
Yes.
Anything could happen. 49ers, for all the injuries that they've had, it's incredible that they're still up for not only to win the NFC West, but to be the #1 overall seed in the NFC.
Great entertainment in the NFL this past week, and the last 2 weeks should be just as fascinating. Well, we'll see how Ryan and I did in our picks last week, and then choose who we want in these big games upcoming. That's next. Bonus time with Drennan, Big Play Sports Network, brought to you by FanDuel.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Garage Beer. No bitterness, no frills, no IPA, just beer-flavored beer. Find local retailers who sell garage beer near you by visiting drinkgaragebeer.com.
All right, let's dive into our handicapping segment. Ryan and I always choose the toughest games on the slate for the upcoming week. Last week, I went 6-2 against the spread. Ryan went 4-4. So on the season, I'm now 45-47 against the spread. Ryan is 39-40 against the spread. And a couple of weeks that Ryan couldn't make it, Pat McGuire subbing for Ryan has the lead at 10-3. But it's unfair because I understand on the other shows that he does, his record is terrible, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's like the Indianapolis Colts. He can be hot and he can be the front runner for the first half of the season, and then things can go kaput. It's not fair. The sample size isn't big enough.
All right, here we go. Here's the top games on the upcoming weekend. Pittsburgh is -3.5 at Cleveland. DK Metcalf, of course, was suspended for 2 games, as he should have been for, I say, punching that fan. But regardless, I've got to take Pittsburgh in this game, Ryan.
Yep, you're not going to get any argument from me. Pittsburgh should win this one easy. They've got a lot at stake to win the AFC North. I expect a clean, at least a touchdown victory from the Steelers.
Houston is getting 2.5 at LA against the Chargers. You pick this one first.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. They're one of the hotter teams in the NFL. I know they struggled a little bit against the Rams, but they're winners of 5 straight, I believe. The Chargers' offensive line is still a mess due to injury. I expect Will Anderson and company to get after Justin Herbert, make it a hard day for him. I'll take the Texans to win and cover.
I do too. Chargers are already in. Houston needs the game and have any chance of winning the division with Jacksonville. Baltimore is getting 2.5 at Green Bay. Now, this is a tough one to pick because of Lamar Jackson. Will he play or not? I guess in practice yesterday, he was limited. There's questions about him. And certainly there's questions about Green Bay. I like Huntley as the backup more so than Willis. If Jordan Love, who got a concussion, can't play. Problem is that Willis got hurt too, which means they have to go to a practice squad quarterback. I'm going to take Baltimore in this one. They've got to have the victory. They'll be watching the scoreboard as well, but they're getting 2.5. This is a tough one because of these injuries, Ryan.
It is a tough one. I'm going to go Green Bay. They're the better team. I understand the injuries, but the Packers also have a lot at stake because they have to win another game to get in the playoffs. They don't want anything crazy to happen with the Lions behind them. I trust the Packers defense much more than I trust the Ravens defense, and with the home advantage of the 3 points, I'll take Green Bay to cover this one.
Jacksonville's on the road at Indianapolis. They're the favorite by 6.5. Go.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy for me. I'm going Jacksonville. Listen, I got to admit when I was wrong. At some point you saw what Brock Purdy did to that Colts secondary. I expect Trevor Lawrence, as hot as he is right now, to do the same. I think the Colts are reeling it in. Obviously, I think the Jaguars are going to win this one easily. I'll take them to cover.
Yeah, they're so hot right now. I totally agree, and I'll go with the team that I predicted would win that division. Next is Philadelphia. They're getting 2.5 at Buffalo. This was a tough one, but Philly's already in. Buffalo, of course, is too. But I like Buffalo at home in what could be a preview of the upcoming Super Bowl. I'll take the Bills.
I'll take the Bills as well. They're still fighting for that division in the AFC East. Josh Allen, better than Jalen Hurts. The home field advantage, again, only 1.5. I'll take it. Bills to cover.
The Chicago Bears are +3 at San Francisco against the 49ers. Another tough one here. Both these teams heading to the playoffs. Your pick first.
This one is a tough one. I'm going to go the Bears to cover this one. 49ers are playing well, but so are the Bears. Caleb Williams, again, maybe him and Trevor Lawrence playing some of the best quarterback in the NFL right now. I love the way Ben Johnson schemes up that running game. They got the duo with Swift and Monangai. I'll take the Bears to cover this one, Bruce.
I like the 49ers. They've got motivation not only to win the division, as we pointed out earlier, but they also could get the #1 seed still in the NFC. There you have it. Well, we've got a lot to cover in the next segment as we go into the college football playoffs. That's next on Bonus Time. Well, the college football playoffs have begun, and of course, it started with Alabama's 34-24 victory against Oklahoma. Bad enough that the Sooners blew a 17-point lead, jumping out 17-0 advantage, but they now become historic, being only the second team in college football playoff history to blow a 17-point lead. Guess who the other team was? It was Oklahoma. That's right back. That was back in 2017. They blew a 17-point lead to Georgia, losing that game 54-48 in the Rose Bowl semifinals. Now, to make matters worse, Alabama actually scored 17 unanswered points, and the Tide, they grabbed the 17-0 lead, but the Tide fought back to tie the game by halftime. Let me refresh your memory. Oklahoma had featured one of the best defensive units in the country all season long. Here's another fact that will haunt Oklahoma in this loss. Their kicker, the Lou Groza Award winner, Tate Sandell, had not missed a field goal since the opening game of the season. He had made 24 straight. He missed 2 critical attempts in the second half. The Alabama defense sacked Sooners quarterback John Mateer 5 times. This win for Alabama avenges their loss to Oklahoma earlier in November. And of course, it gives the biased selection committee justification in getting the Tide the berth, giving the Tide the berth in the playoffs. But they can say, see, we told you so. But they're not going to make anybody at Notre Dame feel any better. Here's another negative for Oklahoma. They're now 0-5 in the college football playoffs. Credit Bama's quarterback Ty Simpson for staging the comeback that he did to help get this victory. This game will give the Tide confidence as they go forward that they can overcome any deficit, and they may need that confidence because next up for them is #1 Indiana in the Rose Bowl, Ryan.
Yeah, once John Mateer threw that pick near the end of the first half to tie the game at 17-17, and knowing that Alabama was getting the ball back in the second half, you knew that that game was probably all but over. Momentum was all on Alabama's side. Good for them. You're right. The committee can maybe hang their heads high now, but again, I won't take them to beat Indiana. That's for sure.
Miami 10, Texas A&M 3. Now, I'm not a big fan of low-scoring defensive games, but I found this game to be one of the most entertaining and certainly intense affairs that one could watch. Miami came into this playoff matchup averaging 34 points a game on offense. The Aggies were averaging 36 points a game on offense. Yet these two explosive offensive attacks were stymied by each other's defensive efforts. Missed field goals because of the 30-mile-per-hour wind gust couldn't stop the Canes from prevailing in this big one. That's because running back Mark Fletcher ran for 172 yards, including a very crucial 56-yard run at the end of the game, which allowed 18-year-old freshman sensation Malachi Toney to on that end around to score the touchdown the only touchdown of the game, which atoned for his fumble, which gave the Aggies at that time a chance to win this affair. Both defensive fronts relentlessly applied pressure on both quarterbacks, Carson Beck of Miami and Marcel Reed of A&M. All game long, they were relentless. Unbelievable pressure. What a game this was. This is Miami's first 11-plus win season since 2003. So it's on to the Cotton Bowl for Miami and our defending national champion, Ohio State Buckeyes. The winner will earn the right to play the semifinals against either Georgia or Ole Miss in the Fiesta Bowl. The Miami-Ohio State matchup brings back memories of Jim Tressel's national championship win in 2003 over the Canes, 31-24 in double overtime, you'll recall. And speaking of great defense, the Buckeyes are the only team in America to hold opponents to under 10 points a game, 8.2 to be precise. And offensively, Ohio State features Heisman candidate Julian Sayin, fabulous NFL receivers, and a freshman running back in Jackson, who's almost as impressive as Miami's Tony. The Buckeyes are a 9.5-point favorite, Ryan.
Yeah, Bruce, you expected the Alabama-Oklahoma game to be a defensive battle. That wasn't the case. And then vice versa, you expected Miami-Texas A&M to be a barn burner, and it was one of the lowest scoring college football playoff games we've ever seen. If you're Matt Patricia, Ohio State's offensive coordinator, you're probably licking your chops watching that game, Bruce, because that defense in Ohio State, I don't think Carson Beck is nearly ready for that.
It's going to be a challenge for Ohio State. Miami's for real. There's no question about it. They better be careful. I like Ohio State. So does Vegas, but we shall see. Be careful. All right. If the other two playoff games didn't prove without question that this current playoff format of including group of 5 conference champions has got to change, I don't know what does. What a joke. Ole Miss 43, Tulane 10. Oregon 51, James Madison 34. Ducks led by 34-6 at halftime. It was 48-13 before garbage time, and James Madison, they should be applauded for not giving up. But come on. Both Tulane and James Madison had absolutely no business being in these playoffs. They've got to change this. It's only going to get worse. If it means expanding to 16 teams, so be it. But even that isn't going to fix it or change this gigantic flaw. Maybe once every 10, 15, 20 years, one of these group of 5 teams could pull off a major upset. But even if that happens, they still have no chance of winning the national championship. So, if anything, these two games proved it, Ryan.
Yeah, it was every college football player's worst nightmare, Bruce. Exactly what we thought might happen with these teams did happen. Again, I agree with you. I give James Madison credit for not packing it in. Their offense proved they're a good offense, but again, they just can't keep up with a team like Oregon. And then the Tulane, we already saw them lose big to Ole Miss, and it was just the same here in the first round of the college football playoff.
All right, this coming up is the Alabama-Indiana. This is Indiana's first Rose Bowl appearance since 1968, when they finished the regular season 9-1 and were co-Big Ten champions with Purdue and Minnesota. The Big Ten controversially selected the Hoosiers to represent the conference in the granddaddy of them all against Southern Cal. Trojans were also 9-1 regular season, winning the Pac-8 conference as it was back then. They were coached by John McKay, who later left Southern Cal to become the head coach at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he failed atrociously in the pros. A lot of people still contend that Indiana team was coached by Lee Corso, but that's not true. John Pont was actually the coach of the Hoosiers back then. Southern Cal won the game 14-3, and a guy by the name of O.J. Simpson was the player of the game. By the way, for those of you who are curious, Lee, not so fast Corso, did not become head coach in Indiana until 1973. He never finished higher. He was far from achieving excellence. Never finished higher than tied for third in the Big Ten. In fact, he finished in last place twice in his 10-year stint in Indiana, compiled an overall record of 27, 53, and 2, in Big Ten competition. This will be Alabama's third Rose Bowl appearance. They first played in 2021 in the college football playoff semis against Notre Dame, and they won 31-14. And then Nick Saban again was their coach in 2024 in the Rose Bowl when the Tide lost to the eventual champion Michigan Wolverines of Jim Harbaugh 27-20 in overtime in the semifinal. The Tide won 6 national championships under Saban. He won another one at LSU. This is Alabama's first playoff appearance under second-year coach Kalen DeBoer. Indiana under head coach Kirk Cignetti appeared last year, and their first game they lost to Notre Dame 27-17. They enter the playoffs as the only undefeated team in the field at 13-0, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, for Alabama, you went through a tough defense in Oklahoma. You made them look like Swiss cheese. Now Indiana is a new animal. If they go ahead and make this upset, then you got to give the committee credit, I suppose. Ty Simpson played really well. I just don't see that same outcome going against that Indiana front seven. I expect Indiana to take care of business.
Yeah, I do too. I hope that's the case for Big Ten's sake. So Ole Miss earns the right to avenge their loss to Georgia in the Sugar Bowl game. The two played back on October the 18th in an SEC matchup, and Georgia scored the last 17 points of that game to win 43-35. The Rebels have rallied behind new head coach Pete Golding, taking over for the departed Lane Kiffin, who jilted the program, as we all know, for the LSU job. Now, you want to hear a good one? Get this. Kiffin gets $250,000 of bonus money because Mississippi won their playoff game. Part of his deal with LSU is that LSU is going to pay the bonus money that Kiffin would have earned for every victory in the playoffs. So if the Rebels go all the way, that's $1 million for Kiffin. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, the SEC champion Georgia Bulldogs will be motivated to avenge their loss last year to Indiana in the quarterfinals. Georgia, 6.5-point favorite, Ryan.
Yeah, you remember that game when they played earlier in the regular season? It looked like Ole Miss was going to win that one. Georgia has been playing bad in the first half. That was kind of their MO. They come back in the second half. They kind of remedied that later in the season. I'll be rooting for Ole Miss because I want them to win. I want them to not maybe suffer so much from that Lane Kiffin, but I expect the Bulldogs to win this one, Bruce.
I totally agree. And finally, the Texas Tech-Oregon matchup is going to be a dandy. No question. Tech features one of the nation's dominant defensive units. They allow only 10.9 points per game. That ranks third in the country, only behind Indiana and Ohio State. Meanwhile, Oregon's offense is one of the top scoring offenses in the country. And the Ducks are averaging 39 points a game offensively. But let's not forget that Texas Tech is averaging 42 points a game offensively. Oregon is merely a 1.5-point favorite.
Texas Tech, one of the most balanced teams in college football right now, but Oregon, Dante Moore's playing really well. I know me and other Browns fans will have our eyes on him as we look forward to the NFL draft. I like the Ducks in this one. I think they're just a little class above Texas Tech, but I wouldn't be surprised, Bruce, if this is the closest game in the second round of the college football playoff.
Really going to be entertaining games coming up in college, the college football playoffs. Back in a minute. Hopefully the Cavaliers are riding the ship with a couple of victories in a row, and they'll be playing tomorrow on Christmas Day, one of the featured NBA games against the New York Knicks. I heard that Atkinson actually was reaching out to some of the Guardians players about, going through slump times in a season. That was kind of interesting. I know there's been some chatter about Atkinson, but the Cavs will be fine. They've been banged up all season long. How about the Kansas City Chiefs leaving Arrowhead for a new dome across the border in Kansas? That's kind of controversial in Kansas City right now. And I have to mention a trade that the Boston Red Sox made with the St. Louis Cardinals. It's very significant. Boston gets Wilson Contreras, who's now a first baseman, former catcher for Prospects. They already made another deal with St. Louis that brings them Sonny Gray. So they're not standing still. They certainly want to contend in that very difficult Eastern Division. The White Sox signed that Japanese slugger Manataka Murakami, but now there's rumors that they're going to make a trade with Cincinnati and send Luis Robert to Terry Francona and the Reds in the Queen City. Ask Bruce segment next on Bonus Time. All right, time for the Ask Bruce segment. Fire away, Ryan.
Alrighty, this one's from our boy Andy. He says, Merry Christmas, Bruce. How do you feel about the NFL overtaking the NBA viewership on Christmas Day in recent years?
Right back to you with that Merry Christmas wish, Andy. You're a great guy. You've been following yours truly here for so many years. So best to you and your family. I have no problem with it. I'd rather watch the NFL rather than the NBA, quite frankly. And to tell you the truth, it's too bad because what looked at the beginning of the season like some really interesting matchups on Christmas Day in the NFL, most of these teams have already been eliminated.
Alrighty, hey Bruce, which is the biggest surprise to you? The Seahawks potentially winning the NFC West, the Bears potentially winning the NFC North, or the Panthers potentially winning the NFC South?
I guess you could say all of the above. I guess Carolina, that's, process of elimination between them and Tampa Bay. Whoever prevails, they're going nowhere in the postseason. But certainly Seattle is to be credited because that's a tough division with the Rams and the 49ers, especially when the 49ers are healthy like they appear to be now as we close out the year. Yeah, who picked the Bears? It was all Green Bay or Detroit, right? And even the season that Minnesota had a year ago, even though they lost Darnold. So all three of those scenarios have turned out to be very interesting and surprising.
Alrighty, hey Bruce, which remaining team in the college football playoff do you think poses the biggest threat to Ohio State repeating as national champions?
I think right off the bat, you got to say Miami. I was incredibly impressed with their victory over Texas A&M. That was an excellent Texas A&M team. They had gone undefeated the entire year until their last game, and they're against their rivals, the Texas Longhorns. And obviously, no one would have predicted that kind of a defensive battle like Ryan and I covered in the previous segments. But I think Miami is going to be a tremendous. You got to take them one at a time. If we beat Miami, then you got Georgia or Ole Miss. Either one of them are going to be very difficult. I mean, there's no easy path this year, and it's a little tougher for Ohio State, at least on paper, because they lost to Indiana.
Alrighty, last one for you, Bruce. You guys got about a minute here, and this one's actually for me. Bruce, I have no idea who is going to win Coach of the Year in the NFL. I don't know if we've ever had a more controversial decision because I look at all of the teams. You could say Mike Vrabel, right? You could say Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. You could say Sean Payton in Denver. You could say Ben Johnson in in Chicago. You could say Mike McDonald in Seattle. I've been wrapping my head around this. Who do you think deserves Coach of the Year?
I think it is still to be determined. No,
Absolutely.
I mean, let's see. Yeah, let's see what happens in these last 2 weeks of the season, and I think we'll have a clearer picture. So hold on to that question, Ryan, and let's address that in a couple of weeks after we conclude the regular season. And by process of elimination, some of those aforementioned guys will be by the wayside, even though they still should be applauded for having great successful seasons when a lot of these guys and their teams were not expected to even contend. Well, that about wraps it up for this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network, brought to you by FanDuel. I'm Bruce Drennan on behalf of Ryan Smith. Once again, on behalf of our entire staff here at Big Play, we wish all of you and your families a very Merry Christmas. Please be safe in your travels. And we look forward to having you join us next week on the show. And so until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio, and I love you, Cleveland.